Hello everybody, welcome back to another video where I talk over a game, and today's topic is a little heavier than usual because for a while now my dad has been in a care home. He's been there since December 2022, and the other day, April 13th, he passed away after having had a lung infection that started on the 11th, so the Friday evening before. Now, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in one of the previous videos, but the thing is, I'm not confident with administration at all, and there was a whole thing back then, well, there still is, kinda, about how difficult it was going to be because I don't really have much of his information, and that is because somewhere in 2019, so a couple of years before he actually got admitted to a care home, he had been moved into a new apartment building because he had broken up with his relationship that he had had previously because his former girlfriend of 17 years found that he was actually talking to another woman and exchanging certain photos, so she kicked him out. That meant he was put on like an urgent waiting list to get an apartment, and he got an apartment in this building in another town, like 15 minutes down the road, so not too far. And after a few months of having lived there, he met this woman who moved into an apartment on the ground floor of the same building, and they started talking, and initially I had no idea what type of woman this was, but he was constantly talking about her because he was beforehand trying out all sorts of different dating websites because he was lonely, basically. Now, by then he was like 71, 72, something like that, and he had a fairly nice car. Was that a Mazda CX-5 or something? Something expensive anyway. Big red car. And he was talking about this woman that he'd met, how amazing she was, and how she took care of everything and all that sort of thing, which was already kind of odd because he was used to taking care of things by himself. Now, by that time, his previous in-between girlfriend, the woman that caused the breakup in the first place, well, he caused it as well by sending her nudes, but still. So the woman in between his 17-year-old relationship and this other woman that he met who moved in downstairs, she had already kind of mentioned to me that she thought he was becoming a little bit forgetful, and I thought, well, I'm not really seeing it. Maybe it's just his age. You know, people get older, they tend to somehow forget things, but it didn't seem like a big deal, except back then, around the time he started hanging out with this new woman, things got worse fast, and within 6 months of meeting her, I already got an engagement card in the mail, and she had managed to get him to sign this document that allowed her access to his bank account. And every time that I would have to go over there, mostly to want to see my dad, but she would always be there, of course. There was no time alone with my dad ever. She was always talking about marriage and all that sort of thing, continuously claiming that it wasn't about the money. Nope, wasn't about the money. And usually when people repeat things over and over again, that means there is definitely an element of that involved. And a few months after that, he went driving in the middle of the night on the wrong side of the road. He had convinced himself that he needed to go pick up some new shoes and that he was headed in a completely different direction to where he's actually driving. Several cop cars were on the scene to get him off the road, and fortunately he did not run into anybody. But they did take him to a hospital in a nearby town to have him checked out because, of course, he was acting a little strange, and they did a couple of scans on him. And that is when they concluded that he had dementia. So from that point on, she really couldn't get him to sign anything. Pretty sure she has tried, because I saw a couple of notes where he tried to write that he wanted her to take care of things, but his handwriting was so bad at that point that I'm pretty sure none of the official instances believed that, and that kind of saved him in a way. I mean, he still ended up dying of dementia and the lung infection, obviously, but it kind of saved him from probably having had to marry her because she was a huge manipulator. She still is. She's still out there. And then perhaps meeting a similar fate to what her previous husbands had allegedly met, because she would often talk about how she had been in multiple marriages and she didn't want to have to bury another one, like the manipulative language toward him to make him feel bad about the fact that he was like at least 9 years older than her, and how she was constantly worried that he would die before her and he wasn't allowed to do that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so she had mentioned that she had been with a few other guys previously, and they were all old, sick men, one of whom, apparently a week before he actually passed, wrote some type of letter of recommendation for her. I'm not entirely sure why, but we can't even really confirm that it was him who wrote that, because apparently it was written on a computer, so not even handwritten. But the letter was all about, oh, I think she's so amazing, and if it weren't for her, I wouldn't possibly have lived this long because I'm a sick old man, and blah, blah, blah. It's really gross, actually, the letter that he wrote. But probably she wrote it in his stead. But yeah, that type of person who tends to hook up with lonely old men who look as though they have money. And since I said my dad has or had a really nice car, and he wasn't against spending money on people that he liked, she probably thought, oh, here's my next mark. And actually got the diagnosis before she managed to tie the knot. So, of course, it's terrible that he had dementia and that he eventually ended up moving into a care home. But there he was kind of shielded from any of her cooking, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so he was in the care home. And even though she wasn't able to get him to sign anything, that doesn't mean that she would just return his stuff and his administration and everything. She had that at her house. She had all of his stuff. I'm pretty sure she threw most of it away. Like, not a single photo album has ever resurfaced. Any photos that we tried to put in his room in a care home were mysteriously gone a few days after they were put up because she didn't want anything from the past to influence him and all that sort of thing. In other words, she didn't want a picture of his mother on the wall because his mother probably had a bigger influence over him than she could have had in the few years that they had met. She was very insecure, very jealous, and every time we would bring things in to cheer him up or something, some snacks they might have liked, next time that she would show up, which would probably be the day after, she would put it in the trash, and that would be that. And she would also constantly get him like riled up about things that we would leave behind to try and get him to go against it. And like the little table that I brought in, he would constantly tell me like, oh, that needs to go. It can't be here. This isn't some storage space. Like, he wouldn't normally say these things, but she had probably put that in his head. And I do have a few voicemail messages where she is talking to him as well while she's talking to us, and the way that she spoke to him was just really, really disrespectful. But all in all of the stuff that he had in the ways of administration, all of his bank cards and stuff like that, that was at her place, and we could not get to it without some carrot on a stick type of deal like, oh, you can come over to my place and we can talk. And I never really wanted to do that because she was a huge energy vampire. So in addition to dreading him passing away, obviously, because it would be the first of my parents to pass away. That's always a really huge milestone. Dreading the funeral arrangements. I was also dreading the fact that I didn't really have anything of his administration-wise that would help me take care of the whole inheritance thing that would come afterwards. And my brother and I strongly suspected that she was actually racking up debts for us, basically, so that after he passed away and we wouldn't be able to fight anything off because we wouldn't know what was going on or be able to take care of anything, she expected us to just accept whatever inheritance was there, and then we figured that there was going to be some huge debts that we would then get stuck with. So that's the type of games she would play. There's a lot more to her interactions with my dad and the whole story than I can put in a short video, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But let's just say she was the stereotypical narcissistic manipulator and potentially a Black Widow, but we don't know that for sure. And she really made him suffer by basically just coming over there 3 times a week and probably filling his head with nonsense. And of course, since he had dementia, it was already quite difficult for him to process anything anyway. So that was hell for him and for us because we tried to make him comfortable as much as we could. But of course, we both have jobs, my brother and I, and we couldn't fight off everything because, like I said, anytime we brought something in, it would get either broken or just tossed out in general. So there was a lot of dread going on with that. And then the actual moment where he was passing away came, and it was very overwhelming, as you would expect. But I still didn't want him to pass alone, so I went there anyway. And it was really weird. It was like part of my spectrum thing was like acting up, and other times it was keeping me really calm. Like if there was no person there in the room with me and my dad while he was slowly passing away, I could be calm, I could be collected, I could plan ahead, I could think about what it meant and all that sort of thing, like very rational. But then as soon as somebody from the care staff walked in and just simply asked like, how are we doing here? I would immediately choke up and not be able to talk, and I would just have to cry for like a minute or so until I managed to calm myself down to get a few words out. But it's like whenever somebody like directly asked me how I was feeling or something, how we were doing and all that sort of thing, just to ask about the situation in general relating to my dad, everything would just kind of shut down. And it's still kind of like that to this day. Like with some people it's a little bit less than others, and in some cases I can keep myself like under control by just talking about things factually, like, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened on that day, that time, and then we did this and this and this. But I'm not going to go into how it felt or how the moment was, because then I just have to stop. And particularly in like a work setting, I don't want to be breaking down because that's not professional. And then the whole blockage comes up like, you need to be professional. This is a work environment, blah, blah, blah. So there's that. So 99% of the time, I'm okay and able to rationalize my way through things. And then every once in a while, I just choke up at some random moment. And then hope that people don't see that and don't judge that. Because obviously, like if I'm walking a dog and they see me walking around with red eyes, they don't know what's going on. And there is this tendency, because of the resting bitch face that I got, for people to be very negative and make assumptions about what's going on with me, and they're probably, I don't know, in the negative somehow. So then you get judged. Hooray. Anyway, so after he passed, we did actually manage to get her to give us some of his administration back. So we did get some of it. Now, most of it was not super useful, and she did stupid things as well, like cut his bank card into several pieces. I don't know what that was supposed to do, but it's just a little kick while you're down type of thing that she likes to do, I imagine. And other little things, like his wallet was this faux leather thing, and she used some type of tape that didn't really come off of that to tape it to the folder where she had put all the stuff in there. So when I actually went to get the tape off, the outside shell of the faux leather wallet came off, and now it looks really ragged. She did the same thing with his passport, which fortunately did manage to withstand the tape, so she didn't actually manage that. The administration was pretty much a mess. We had to resort everything, and then ultimately we didn't really need most of it, because a lot of the instances that she did include letters from were instances that the local government informs for you, so we didn't really need that. But the fact that we have it back is good, I guess. But it's far from everything that we got. Like most of his tax return stuff, but pretty much all of it is not in here. We got the most recent one, probably because she had that on hand, and maybe she threw everything else away, I don't know. So now I'm struggling to take care of the aftermath, which is a lot of administration, a lot of filling out forms, a lot of trying to figure out where you need to be next, and it's definitely not something that I would put anybody through who's just lost somebody, but somebody on the spectrum in particular who doesn't really have much help in that regard. It's a huge energy drain. And there's also this impending doom feeling of, I don't know what else is coming this way. Like, what else am I supposed to do? Am I missing something? Am I filling out this form incorrectly? Like, I had to fill out this form to note that I was going to accept the inheritance on a beneficial basis, meaning that if there are indeed debts, then whatever is left of his estate will be used to pay off the debts, and if there's nothing left of his estate, then that's just it. The debtors, are just not going to get any more than what's there, like that type of thing. He didn't really have anything left anyway other than his bank account, I imagine, which she probably drained beforehand because of course she knew he was deceased. So there's always a couple of days between locking somebody's account and the moment that they actually pass away. So I imagine once I do get to look on the account, that we'll see some withdrawals there. I'm not sure if I can fight that, not sure if I have the energy to fight that, but that's probably going to be a thing. Anyway, so he didn't have a car anymore, he didn't have a house, he didn't have a mortgage. All of what he actually had was then this one organizer with some paperwork and whatever IKEA furniture was in his room at the care home, which was already broken down, so we got rid of that because he spent a lot of time trying to move out of the care home, even though he wasn't actually moving anywhere, and that left him pulling stuff off of walls and just breaking things, and most of it was pretty damaged or about to fall apart, so we didn't actually have anything worth keeping to begin with. So there aren't really like physical things that we could sell. So the only thing we have is accounts and potentially some life insurance, maybe. I don't really know if he has any of that. See, that's the thing, I don't know. And so I'm going to have to go and dig into that. There are fortunately a few websites or central registration databases where we can potentially get some more info on him, but if they don't have anything for us or I can't figure something out, then I'm just gonna have to hope that nothing terrible happens because I can't supply the information, because honestly there's nothing much I can do. So that's great. So I'm just trying to do what I can, and that's all I can do, and hopefully that'll lead to a somewhat positive result. I'm expecting, like I said, that there's going to be nothing left of his bank account anyway. So basically I'm doing a lot of administration just to make sure that I don't get stuck with debt, and that everything is settled administration-wise, what I can do. So as far as grieving goes, probably not going to be able to do a whole lot of that until all of this is settled. And even then, like I said, a lot of times I tend to rationalize my way through life as it is, particularly in these stressful times. So I'm guessing there's a lot of stuff that's bottled up that needs to be processed or expressed somehow. But if it's not in a controlled manner, then I don't want that. I don't want to break down in public. I barely even want to break down in private. But we'll see how it goes. In any case, that's my experience so far with losing a parent while being on the spectrum. Of course, I had some extra issues in the shape of his now ex, because as soon as he passed away, she immediately said, "Oh, I'm going to take my hands off of this now. I'm not going to do anything. You're going to have to do it yourself." So there were a few days where we didn't have any administration, nor did we have anybody taking care of any business, and we just kind of left to swim on our own. But like I said, I'm doing what I can. And that is it for this video. If you have any comments, any experiences, make sure to put that in the comment section below. I'd like to hear it. For now, thanks for watching this slightly longer video than usual. Hope to see you in another one. And bye-bye for now.